Are Labour lying to you about the state of the economy? Now, before the election, it was all about this, wasn't it?
We will not raise tax on working people. No tax rises for income tax, for national insurance, for VAT. We will not raise income tax. We will not raise national insurance. We will not raise VAT.
Labour has no plans to increase taxes on working people.
Well, in an article in the Financial Times before the election, Chancellor Rachel Reeves said this: "We've got the OBR now. We know things are in pretty bad state. You don't need to win an election to find that out." All right, well, now Labour have won. We're hearing this.
Have inherited a projected overspend of £22 billion. A £22 billion hole in the public finances now. Yeah. Not in the future, but now. £22 billion of spending this year that was covered up by the party opposite.
Let's have a little look at this black hole, shall we? Labour have just awarded a 15% pay rise to train drivers. Their union in the main is ASLEF. That's led by Mick Whelan. He sits on Labour's National Executive Committee. That means that train drivers could now earn £70,000 a year, and it's set to cost the taxpayer roughly £100 million. Then there's the old 22% for junior doctors. They haven't actually ruled out striking again next year, by the way. Ed Miliband says Labour will pledge £11.6 billion in overseas climate aid. The Prime Minister announced an additional £84 million for foreign aid. The 5.5%, that's above inflation, by the way, public sector pay rises for teachers and some NHS staff is set to cost roughly £3 billion. That's according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies. They tried to claim the Tories were going to waste £10 billion on Rwanda. Well, each illegal migrant apparently cost us around £400,000 over the course of their lifetime. So by the time we've had 100,000 of them, we've hit £40 billion. Haven't we? And they've removed the deterrent, so how long is it before that happens? And guess what? They can't tell you where all of this money's actually coming from.
We are working through this process and we will make sure that this deal is fair, as we did where it comes to teachers as well, for example, where we had widespread industrial action that caused huge disruption. And again, that was another area where we've come in, we've taken action and we've sorted it out. I ask you
again, who will pay? Where will the money come from?
We will make sure that this is properly worked through and that we ensure that passengers get a fair deal as a part of this process.
Pensioners are already going to get hammered, aren't they? The winter fuel payments, they've all been scrapped. Reeves is trying to claim that she inherited the worst economy since the war. Well, it's just emerged that it's actually going gangbusters. It grew faster than any other G7 nation. Is there not a case for the idea that Rachel Reeves is going to put your taxes up to fill a black hole of her own making? Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got journalist and author, the wonderful Harriet Sargent, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor, the one and only Matthew Larser. Harriet, I'll start with you on this. Has Rachel Reeves created her own black hole here?
Well, she seems to be doing her best to create not just a black hole, but a huge crater. And I can't believe that only a few months since the general election, and for those of us who can remember the 1970s of soaring public pay, inflation, that we're just going, and rising taxes, that we're just going straight back into that era. I mean, I'm thinking I might have to dig out my old purple hot pants at this rate.
Well, that would be something, wouldn't it? Sure. I mean, are Labour now just openly lying here about the state of the finances and the economy?
Look, it's that age-old thing of claiming credit for things that other people done. All political parties do it. Labour are particularly good at it. So they talked the economy down when they were campaigning, and now they're beginning to talk it up when they begin to spend all of our money. But the real more important thing is when they talk about the black hole. The public must start to understand they have created this black hole and are continuing to grow it. These large pay rewards are then rewarding the people who sponsor the Labour Party, who are their members, fine, but everybody should be aware we will all be bearing that very huge cost.
You're shaking your head.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the junior doctors, ASLEF have a perfectly open relationship with the Labour Party, like unions representing millions of working people do, but the junior doctors have nothing to do with the Labour Party, the BMAs.
But I suppose it is a bit silly that you've just potentially given them a 22% pay rise and they're still going to go on strike next year.
Well, we don't don't know they're going to go on strike next year. I mean, that's just anybody can go on strike at any time if they follow the procedures. I mean, they're much less likely to go on strike next year after they've been given a sensible settlement, which was an awful lot less than they asked for.
You're about to make those procedures easier.
Yeah. And look, when a government...
No, not to go on strike. No, you still have to have a ballot.
When a government capitulates so easily, every union must be...
Exactly.
Let's be clear. ASLEF and its leadership have done the best job for their members. That is their job, and they have done...
Sean, they've got less than they asked for.
But no, that's what you call bargaining.
Yes, exactly. Sean, 850... Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing. It let 22 days of strikes go... It let 22... It let weeks... It let months and months of strikes go ahead. It cost the railway 850 million quid and the economy over £1 billion. And your Secretary of State wouldn't even sit down and talk to them because he wanted to play politics.
Let's be very clear. Your party able to solve that because it's their members leading it. It's a political...
No, we solved it because we want to get the trains running, Sean, which you didn't manage to do.
It's a political action by members of your party working in concert with their government. That's what it looks like.
And it's the government that people have just voted for 6 weeks ago.
I think the main point is there's no reason why these train drivers should be getting this huge right. I mean, they're earning £70,000 a year. And there is an argument for, say, putting up teachers' pay because it's very difficult to attract teachers into the profession. But
it's actually also very difficult to get train drivers. There's a massive shortage of them, Harriet.
Exactly. But when train drivers...
That's why you need to pay them properly.
...advertised. In the north of England, for example, there are 700 people for every job advertised. They have no trouble because everybody, unlike the Labour government, is aware that working for the train companies is a great...
Harry, that's simply not true. If you actually live in the north of England and you sat there last year while one in three Transpennine trains were cancelled because his government didn't get enough train drivers, didn't employ enough train drivers.
So here's
the country was left in chaos.
So here's the argument then, Sean, that actually this is what it takes to make sure that our public services run smoothly without strike action. And the taxpayer just has to suck that up.
Well, that's exactly what Matthew seems to be saying, because what the Labour government has done, and again, if you run a union, you've done a great job, that is your job, but the government's job is to make sure that the public can afford these services, and we cannot sustainably afford the amount of pay increases. And what's more important, if your union wins so easily this time, they will be back because...
So you think public sector pay should fall behind private sector pay? Sorry, Harry.
Yeah, sorry. The other point is that there is nothing about productivity tied up with this.
Right.
I mean, it is just giving them money. They have the most unbelievable Spanish practices in the railway operations. They need 9 people to change 1 plug. They're not allowed... if you ask a railway worker to use an iPad, you have to pay them extra. There is all of this... None of this has been stopped at all, so that there's going to be no gain in productivity, and this is the taxpayer and the rail travellers are going to suffer for this.
We've got 11-point-something billion so that we can invest in clean energy abroad. Starmer just wheeled out straight away, I think the day after he scrapped the Rwanda scheme, 84 million quid in foreign aid. He's just tossing it.
I think that comes from the existing foreign aid budget.
Tossing it all around the world, Matthew, aren't we, at the moment?
No, I mean, look, the 80 million quid...
Pay for it, you see, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's us all who pay for it. We didn't vote for that.
Well, I think people did vote to have junior doctors in hospitals treating patients and to have the trains running so that we didn't impact the economy of the country. Both the junior doctors and the train drivers got less than they wanted for because you had sensible negotiations run by the government.
You keep saying less, right? You keep saying less, but 22%... 22% is huge.
Because they've fallen massively behind.
And what's really important is relative. Is it relative to our ability to afford it? Is it relative to any raise in their productivity? So when you say should public sector workers fall behind in pay compared to private sector, no. But what they should do is match their...
So you want every junior doctor going to Australia, do you, Sean? Do you want thousands going to Australia where they're offered twice the salary?
One thing I will say to that is I actually did interview Dr. Robert Lawrence.
I remember.
Yeah, the guy there. And I did put it to him that even if he got what he wanted, which at the time was 35%...
Yeah, exactly.
Would he still go? And he basically said, probably yes, he's not going to rule it out. So the idea that this will...
Well, I think he's a bit of a joke.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. But, yeah, just getting back to the core of it, though, we can talk about the numbers all we like. We can talk about the numbers, but Rachel Reeves is lying when she says that she didn't know about this black hole.
No, she's not.
And that this black hole is also...
No, she's not. I mean, I spoke to a senior source in the Treasury just a few days ago, and he says that basically every time they open the cupboard, they find more craziness. It isn't true, Sean.
Sorry, Matthew.
They were using... Sean,
simply
no, it's not.
True. I tell you why. Rachel Reeves said it wasn't true, because she said before the election, we have the OBR. You don't have to win an election to find out the state.
The OBR doesn't audit the government, it does a projection of government spending.
What it does, the OBR knows what's going on. And do you know why they're called public spending? Because they're in the public arena.
Well, the entire asylum budget was being funded out of the reserves. That
might well be a fact, but there's no idea that it's a mystery. That simply isn't true.
Harriet, what people are going to absolutely 100% demand now, when we see these figures, so above inflation pay rises, people in the public sector like teachers, etc., the junior doctors that we've spoken about, the train drivers that we've spoken about, they are going to demand a vast improvement in the quality of our public services. Do you think we'll see that?
No, dream on. I don't think so, no. I think maybe there'll be a small improvement, but no, because there is no string. I mean, at least with Tony Blair, and I can't believe I'm standing up for Tony Blair here, but at least with Tony Blair, he had an overall policy for raising productivity. He had police, NHS, they were all given targets which they had to hit for more pay. And they were, they were quite upset. They really had to do it. But there's nothing like this now. I mean, it's just a free-for-all. You can go on claiming money to use an iPad. No one's going to be making you work harder or better for the public. So I don't think it's going to make any difference.
And when Matthew talks about do we want public sector workers not to be paid, of course we want them to be paid.
No, you said you don't.
But, no, you said that. The point being this, though, you have to have some respect for the bill payer, which is everybody else. And everybody else also finds it equally hard to live. So the idea that you could just jack up salaries and it has no effect simply isn't
true.
These
pay rises are lower than the average pay rises in the private sector. It's over 3.5 years.
22%?
Yes.
I would also point out that I think the pensions are a lot lower in the private sector as well.
Exactly.
Well, the pensions differ between the train drivers and the NHS.
Can I ask, where is this money coming from?
Well, the train driver settlement is less than 100 million, OK? So it's going to come from within the existing transport budget. The junior doctor settlement, which is absolutely necessary because there was a particular issue, not everybody, about how the junior doctors are falling behind other people within the system. That's going to be paid for within the health service. And in terms of transforming public services, let's just remind ourselves that Sean's government inherited the longest waiting list in the NHS history after 14 years of failure. When the last Labour government left office, the waiting list were at their shortest. Not income tax, not national insurance.
But none of that explains what Labour are going to do.
Well, in 6 weeks, Sean, in 6 weeks we've got the junior doctors back to work, so they're treating patients.
Whatever the Tories did or didn't do, we are talking about what Labour's going to do.
Yes, and we've got the junior doctors treating patients, Sean.
I could tell you about to recover from the pandemic. I could tell you all those kind of things. What people are concerned about now is what are Labour going to do and what's it going to cost. Because it's only 100 million this year. How much will it be next year going forward? Because we, the public, will be carrying those bills.